Welcome to Carol's Books and Storytime. I have a story for the children today. It's called The Lost Lamb. Now, I love sheepdogs and I love sheep. It's a thing that I have and I've had for a very long time about sheep and sheepdogs. So this is called The Lost Lamb. It was snug and warm in the old shepherd's hut. The two blue merle sheepdogs nosed open the door and trotted in gratefully. They sank down on the rag rug in front of the dancing flames of the fire that burned brightly in the hearth. Their job for the day was over, and they could rest. Gratefully they curled up on the rug and closed their bright blue eyes. Every bone in their doggy bodies ached from the hard day of running over the mountains, obeying the shepherd's whistles and gathering in the sheep and early lambs before the storm came. Jock, the old shepherd, had looked at the sky that morning, and his country knowledge told him that they were in for snow. And also that he'd better get the pregnant ewes and the newborn early lambs and their mothers down from the high ground to the safer pastures nearer to the shepherd's hut, where he could keep them safe in the walled field. Jock knew each of his sheep. He had at least 99 ewes in his care, and one old obnoxious ram who ruled his wives with a rod of iron. Old Jock had sent the dogs off to the hut to rest. They'd done a good job of herding the stubborn and silly sheep down the mountain to safety. So he'd sent them off duty to get warm, whilst he counted his sheep to make sure that they were all there. Jock counted and then recounted again. One ewe was missing, but which one? His eyes scanned the sheep. Was it the old ram, the daddy of them all? No, he was there. Then which one was it? Carefully he looked at each of his ewes, and he realised it was his favourite, the one he had looked after and brought up on a bottle 2 years previously because her mother had died. It was his Matty that was missing. Making sure the gate was closed, he started to search the surrounding fields, calling out, "Matty, Matty, where are you, girl?" But no answering bar greeted his straining ears. This was unusual. Being a pet sheep, she rarely strayed from his side, and she always came when she was called. Perhaps she'd sneaked into the hut and was even now cuddling up to the dogs. Yes, that was it. Matty loved the dogs and they loved her. That is where she would be, trying to sneak into a warm place when she should be out in the field with the rest of the flock. Jock pushed open the door of his hut. How inviting the fire looked. Bess and Jen looked so comfortable curled up in front of the fire. There was no Matty lying next to them. Now Jock was really worried. He had to find his pet, but where was she? He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen her. He'd been so busy directing the dogs and herding the sheep, he hadn't missed her in that cascading crowd of whiteness. Where on earth was Matty? He had to find her. She was alone out there in the darkness, alone with the foxes who would steal her lamb as it was being born, or there were hawks which would be waiting to carry off her little lamb if it was born out there. Then Matty might die, frozen to death, smothered in snow. He had to find his pet. "Come, Bess, come, Jen," he called to the dogs. "Matty is missing. I have work for you both. We have to find her." The dogs rose stiffly and stretched reluctantly. They left the warmth of the fire and obediently trotted outside. Old Jock led them to the gate. Leaving Jen there, he commanded, "On guard, girl, on guard. Don't let any of the sheep get out. It's up to you. I need you to guard the sheep, Jen girl. I need you to make sure that not one gets out of the field. On guard." Jen sank down and lay across the gate. Her job was to stay there, occasionally getting up and running around the field to make sure all was well, for foxes could jump the stone wall, or even strange dogs, and harry the sheep, worrying them. But until her master returned, she would stay there, guarding the flock. Come, girl, old Jock called to Bess, and off they set for the mountain top, man and dog looking for the lost sheep. Bending their faces to the wind, they searched. Old Jock knew these mountains like the back of his gnarled old hand. Every so often he would stop, lift the storm lantern he carried, and call out, Matty, Matty, where are you, girl? But no answering bar reached his ears. No sheep ran to meet him, rubbing her woolly head against his leg. Finally, they reached the upper pasture at the very top of the mountain. Still, there was no sign of Matty. Old Jock was beside himself with worry. He needed to find Matty, and he hoped he'd find her before the storm finally broke. It was getting colder, and the craggy rocks looked menacing in the shadows. Where, oh where was Matty? Putting his lantern down on a smooth rock, he turned to Bess. Find Matty, Bess, he commanded, squatting down on his haunches. Find Matty, girl. Bess put her grey and white head between her master's hands and looked into his eyes with her one brown and one blue eye. Then, licking his hand, she set off, nose to the ground, casting around, searching for the familiar smell of Matty. Matty, it seemed, had gone hither and thither over the mountainside, grazing. Bess ran, her nose to the ground, picking up and following Matty's scent. Then, giving a short, sharp bark, she let her master know that she'd found the main trail. Off she went, straight as an arrow, her paws flying over the rough ground to the very top of the mountain. Then down the other side. Jock followed, stumbling over rocks in his haste to follow his faithful dog. At the top of the mountain, old Jock cupped his hands to his mouth and called out once more, Matty, oh Matty, where are you? And then he heard it, a faint "Bah!" It seemed to be coming from the overcrop of rock. Below the rock lay a sheer precipice. A short, sharp bark from Bess, and he knew she had found Matty. It would take all his skill as a shepherd and all Bess's skill as a sheepdog to get Matty out of that predicament. The last thing they needed to do was panic her. Using his whistle and short, sharp commands to the dog, he sent her along the narrow sheep track that led to the small cave under the outcrop of rock. Slowly, sure-footed Bess inched her way along the path until she reached Matty, and then she gently nipped Matty on the back leg to make her turn and face the way she wanted her to go. Then she guided Matty along the path to where old Jock could hook his crook around her neck and pull her into the safety of his arms. Tears of joy started running down his cheeks as old Jock slung Matty across his shoulders. He blew out the lantern and, turning to Bess, he exclaimed, Now take us home, girl. All the way down the mountain, old Jock sang at the top of his voice, sang songs of praise and happiness, for he had found his beloved Matty, the sheep that was lost. What a joyful reunion that was when they got back to the shepherd's hut. Faithful Jen, who had guarded the sheep while Bess and her master were out looking for Matty, barked and barked and barked for joy and ran around them chasing her tail. Bess barked and did the same, both dogs enjoying a joyful rough and tumble in their deep joy. Then all four of them went into the shepherd's hut, rejoicing that Matty had been found, and three animals lay toasting in front of the fire whilst the threatened storm broke around them. I hope you enjoyed that story. I'll tell you another one another time. Bye.